Günaydın. That's about as much Turkish as I know. Okay, so so I want to start by asking everybody a question. How many of you have had to fill out some sort of web form where you've been asked to read a distorted sequence of characters or distorted words such as this one? Okay. How many of you found it really annoying and hated doing it? Excellent. Well, I invented that. That thing is called a CAPTCHA, and the reason it's there is to make sure that you, the entity filling out the form, are actually a human and not a computer program that was written to submit the form millions of times. And the reason it works is because humans have no trouble reading these distorted characters, but computer programs can't do it as well yet. So for example, the reason you have to type these whenever you're trying to get a Facebook account is to prevent computer programs from obtaining millions of Facebook accounts. Now, CAPTCHAs are used all over the internet. It turns out approximately 200 million of these are typed every day by people around the world. Now, when I first heard this number, 200 million, I was very proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that my work has had. But then I started feeling bad, because the thing is, each time you type one of these, not only are they very annoying, but also it takes about 10 seconds to type them. And if you multiply 10 seconds by 200 million, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting about 500,000 hours every day typing these annoying CAPTCHAs because of me. So I started feeling bad, and then I started thinking, is there any way in which we can use this effort, these 500,000 hours, for something that is good for humanity? And the answer to that is yes, and this is what we are doing now. So nowadays, while you type a CAPTCHA, not only are you authenticating yourself as a human, but also you're helping to digitize books. And let me explain how that works. So there's a lot of projects out there trying to digitize books. For example, Google has one. And the basic idea is you start with a physical book, and then you scan it. Now, scanning a book, what it is it's taking a digital photograph of every page of the book. It gives you an image for every page of the book. The next step in the process is that the computer needs to be able to decipher all of the words in these pictures. That's done using a technology called OCR, for optical character recognition. The problem is that for older books, the computer cannot recognize about 30% of the words. So what we are doing now is that we're getting people to recognize these words for us while they type CAPTCHAs on the internet. Okay, so next time you type a CAPTCHA, these words that you're typing are words that are coming directly from a book that is being digitized that the computer could not recognize. And we're using what you type to help digitize books. Now, the reason there are two words instead of one is because, see, one of the words is a word that the computer just got out of a book and it doesn't know what it is. So it cannot use it to figure out whether you're a human or not. So what we do is for one of the words, the computer already knows the answer. For the other word, it's a brand new word that it just came out of a book. And then we're going to give the user both of these words, and we're not going to tell them which one's which. We're just going to say, please type both. And if you type the correct word for the one for which the computer already knew the answer, we assume you're a human. And we also get some confidence that you typed the other word correctly. And if we repeat this process with about 10 different people, and all of them agree on what the new word is, then that word is digitized with very high accuracy. Okay, so that's the process by which a single word is digitized. This process happens to be very effective, so we're digitizing about 100 million words a day, which is the equivalent of about 2 million books a year, all being digitized one word at a time by people typing CAPTCHAs on the internet. Now, because CAPTCHAs are used so often, funny things can happen, and this is especially true because, see, now we are giving people two randomly chosen words right next to each other that come from books. So funny things can happen. So for example, we presented this word that comes from a book. By itself, there's nothing wrong with this word. It's just the word Christians. But if you put it along with another randomly chosen word, bad things can happen. So for example, we presented this. But it's even worse because the particular website where we show this happened to be literally millions of websites use this system. The particular website where we show this happened to be called the Embassy of the Kingdom of God. So it was not very good. Here's another one. A US politician, John Edwards, this is their website. This happened too. That was not very good. Okay, so this is my favorite number of the reCAPTCHA project. This is 1.1 billion. This is the total number of distinct people that have ever helped us digitize at least one word out of a book through this project. So 15% of the world's population has helped us digitize books. And it is this type of number that motivates all of my work. I'm trying to get literally billions of people to come together to work on something. Now, if you think about it, what reCAPTCHA is doing, what this project is doing, is we are somehow reusing human mental processing power from one purpose to another one. Okay? So we took an activity that people did anyways, which was typing CAPTCHAs, and now we're reusing the mental processing power for something else, which is digitizing books. So it's a lot like recycling human mental energy. That's the idea. Now, a lot of my projects have this idea behind them, and I get asked a lot of times, where did this idea come from? And I will tell you where it came from. It is from an idea that I had when I was growing up, when I was a kid. I thought I had a brilliant idea. It turns out it was not a very good idea at the time, but I wanted to do something that I thought was brilliant and also that I thought nobody else had come up with before. It also turns out many people had come up with it before. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a gym. I wanted to start a gym where all the equipment in the gym, all the machines that you exercise are connected to the power company. And when people exercise, I wanted to sell all the power generated by people through exercising to the power company to make money off of them. And the gym was going to be free. I wanted the gym to be completely free so people could come there, but we would make money by selling electricity to the government or to the power company. That's the idea. I thought this was a great idea, and I thought I was the first one to have this idea. It's not true. Many people had had this idea before. And also, this is not a very good idea, it turns out, for two reasons. The first one is that humans are very bad at generating electricity. So that's one thing. The second reason is that gyms, the way they make their money is by having people pay and not go. Whereas here, people have to go to make money, so this is not a very good idea. But if you think about it, it's a very similar idea to reCAPTCHA. We're taking an activity that people do anyways, in this case exercising, and we're reusing the energy to do something else. Okay? So this idea is going to come up with, we're going to come up with this idea again in the talk. Okay, now let me tell you about the project that I've been working on for the last 4 years, 3 years really. It's a new project. It's a company called Duolingo, and it's worth saying how this project started. So I started this project about 3 years ago when I had sold my second company to Google, and I was in a very fortunate position in my life in that I didn't have to work anymore, nor did my children. So I wanted to work on something that had to do with education. This is how I started working on Duolingo. I wanted to do something that had to do with education. Now, my views on education have always been shaped by where I'm from. So I am from Guatemala. This is a public service announcement. That is where Guatemala is. It's also important to note that this is not where they keep the prisoners. That is Guantanamo. It's not the same place. So if you don't know much about Guatemala, Guatemala is a poor country. And one of the things that always struck me is that people talk about education as being an equalizer. It equalizes social classes. But I always thought of education as the opposite. I always thought of it as a divider. Because, you see, what happens, at least in Guatemala, and this happens in many countries in the world, is that if the people who have money can buy the best education for themselves. They can, for example, end up going to Harvard. And because they have such a great education, they continue having money because they were very well educated. Whereas on the other side, the people who don't have very much money barely learn how to read and write. And because of that, they remain not having very much money. So I always saw education as a huge divider. And I wanted to do something with education that equalized things. If you think about it, today the world's educational system is not really working very well. For example, there are about 800 million people throughout the world that should know how to read and write, but don't. And it's usually because they just don't have, they live in a country where they don't have the means to access very good education. So when I started working on Duolingo, what I wanted to do is, one of the big design constraints is I wanted, this was something important. We wanted to do something where it gave the best education to everybody, but for free. So I wanted to do a way to give education entirely for free to everybody. Now, education is very general, and I didn't really want to work on all of education because I work better when I work on just one thing. So I decided to choose one aspect of education that happens to be very big throughout the world, and it is language education. So it turns out that today there are about 1.2 billion people in the world learning a foreign language. Now, this is a funny market. It's a strange market because there's 1.2 billion people in the world learning a language, but 800 million of them satisfy three properties. The first one is that they are learning English. So there's 800 million of them that are learning English. The second is that the reason they are learning English is to get a job or a better job. And the third is that they are of low socioeconomic conditions. Okay, so most of these 1.2 billion people in the world learning a language are poor people learning English in order to get out of poverty. This is most of the people, but strangely, or ironically, most of the ways there are to learn languages usually cost a lot of money or require you to be very wealthy, especially with software. So for example, in the United States, there's a software called Rosetta Stone, which costs about $1,000 in order to buy it for you to learn a language. So the irony here was that most people that need to learn a language are doing it so that they can get out of poverty, but the way to learn a language costs money. So there's this irony. So we wanted to do a way to teach languages that was entirely free. Now, so the question became, how do we make a way to teach languages that is entirely free, but still find a way to finance it? How do we finance a free way to teach languages? And this is, again, where the idea of recycling human energy, or the idea of the gym, came back. See, with the gym, we could offer a gym that was free by extracting value out of the people who were going to the gym and selling it to somebody else. Can we do the same thing with teaching a language? And the answer to that is yes, and this is what we're doing with Duolingo. So what Duolingo is it's a free way to learn languages, but while you're learning, what we do is we extract value to sell it to somebody else so that you don't have to pay. And the way we do it is through translation. So while you're learning a language on Duolingo, some of the exercises that you get ask you to optionally translate things. And these translations are things that have never been translated before, and we use what you're translating to help us to help us translate something. So, for example, CNN is one of our clients, and the way it works is that CNN writes all of their news in English, then they send it to us, and then we give the news to our students, that's in English. These are students that are learning English, and in order to practice what they're learning, they help translate CNN from English into their native language, and then multiple students translate the same piece of news, and then once they're all done translating it, we send it back to CNN, and CNN pays us for having translated that. So that's the basic idea of how we make money. So this is what Duolingo is. So we launched Duolingo about 2 years ago, and what it is a way to learn a new language while simultaneously helping to translate the web. Let me try to play a 1-minute video that explains the concept a lot better than I can. Let's see if this works.
It's a big world out
can we
there.
put
Billions of us trying to.
Can we put the sound, please? Okay.
It's a big world out there.
Sorry, can we do it louder?
It's a big world out there. Billions of us trying to live, love, prosper, and make sense of our brief time on this planet. Since the dawn of humanity, we've been passing information from one person to another through a common language. Unfortunately, you can't communicate with others without knowing or learning their language first. A similar issue has manifested on the web, where text can be penned in dozens of languages, each of which demands a reader's fluency. We've developed an elegant solution to both problems, a way for you to learn a language for free, while at the same time helping to translate text from the web, enabling a wealth of language-shackled information to be liberated for all of humanity. It's called Duolingo. Here's how it works. Let's say you're a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. We start by giving you a sentence from a Spanish website and asking you to translate it. Wait, back up. How can you translate a language you don't know? First, Duolingo only gives you sentences that fit your language level. Beginners get the really simple sentences from the web, and advanced users get the more complex ones. This way, everybody becomes a valuable translator. And second, if you're really lost, you can always see possible translations for words you don't know. Afterwards, Duolingo helps you understand and memorize the words you hovered over through educational examples. You can also vote on the quality of other students' translations, which helps you learn by seeing how others translated the same sentence. And because you create valuable translations while you learn, we return the favor by offering Duolingo completely free of charge. No ads, no hidden fees, no subscriptions, just free. To put the potential benefit of Duolingo into perspective, think about this. If 1 million people would use Duolingo to learn, the entirety of English Wikipedia could be translated to Spanish in just 80 hours. Duolingo. learn a language while translating the web.
Okay, so that's the basic idea of Duolingo. We launched it, thank you. So we launched Duolingo about 2 years ago, and in that time, it has really grown. Today, we have 42 million users learning languages on Duolingo. It is now the most popular way to learn languages in the world. In the United States, for example, there are more people learning a language on Duolingo than in the entire US public school system. And since we launched, we've gotten a lot of accolades. For example, PC Magazine gave us their editor's choice. In fact, they gave us the same rating as this $1,000 software, except Duolingo is 100% free. Now, to me, the most amazing thing about this that I didn't know is that PC Magazine somehow still exists. I didn't realize that. Apple also gave us their iPhone App of the Year. This is the first time that Apple gives an educational app the App of the Year. Usually they give it to games or photo sharing apps. This is the first time they gave it to an educational app. And part of the reason for that is because we spend a lot of effort. Our goal really is to try to educate as many people in the world. And we've decided that the way we're going to reach as many people as we can in the world is through mobile phones. So we spend a lot of effort on Duolingo making our apps really, really good. And the reason for that is because today, 85% of the world's population has access to a mobile phone. Just to put this into perspective, how much reach there is on mobile phones, the fraction of the population that has access to a toilet is only 64%. Okay, so this is why we spend effort developing our mobile apps. Now, the types of things that people say about Duolingo are also very positive. So, for example, this person said in the past 2 days they've learned more from Duolingo than Rosetta Stone in over a month of use. Okay, so the people say very positive things. Then there's also this other one, who was my mother. So some of the things that people say, some of the things that people say are very positive, and it's because Duolingo is very enjoyable, and we spend a lot of effort trying to make Duolingo feel a lot like playing a game when you're using it. So this is what Duolingo actually used to look like. We recently changed it, but this is the basic idea of how Duolingo works is that we split a language into different skills, different units called skills. So for example, food is a skill, or animals is a skill. That's where we teach you all the animal words. Or food is where we teach you how to order at a restaurant, etc. And the idea is that at the beginning, only one skill is open. And you have to complete that skill to unlock new skills. So it really feels a lot like playing a game. Also, for each of the skills, we have a strength bar that measures how well you know that skill. So whenever you get something correct related to that skill, your strength goes up. Whenever you get something wrong related to that skill, your strength goes down. And if you don't use Duolingo or don't use the skill very often, the strength goes down naturally, just to model the fact that you may be forgetting some things. Okay, so that's the basic idea of how Duolingo works. And by the way, these strength bars really get people to return a lot because people want to have all their skills full. Now, in case they don't return to keep on learning, we do a lot of things to try to get them to come back more often. For example, we send them an email with our mascot crying, having them come back. We've actually tested a lot of things to see what are the things that make people come back more, and this is the winner. Making you feel guilty is really important. We've even tested how the size of the puddles at the bottom, and this happens to be the winner, the one that gives most guilt. And inside a lesson, this is what Duolingo looks like inside a lesson. So inside a lesson, the way we teach you a concept is through very small exercises that last maybe 10 to 30 seconds each, where you have to do something. You're always doing something while you're using Duolingo. So for example, you may have to say something to the app and it tells you whether you said it correctly or not. Or you may have to enter, click on a picture or something. And at any point in time, if you get an exercise wrong, you lose a life. So at the top of the screen you have 3 lives. And if you get an exercise wrong, you lose a life. And if you lose all your 3 lives, you have to start the lesson over. So it really does feel like playing a game. Now, if you're able to complete the lesson without losing your 3 lives, then you get points, and you're told, these are the words you learned, etc. Now, after you finish a lesson, that is the place where we ask you whether you want to help us translate or not. So during the lessons, you're not doing any useful translations for us. But after you finish a lesson, we say, hey, you just learned about food words. Do you want to help us translate something that is related to food in order to practice? And that's where we give you a document that is related to what you just learned that you can help us that you can help us translate, and that's how you're practicing. Now, this is one of the reasons why people like Duolingo the most, and it's because they're learning with real-world content. So not only are they learning with just simple illustrative sentences, they're also learning with real-world content. Now, when we started working on Duolingo, we didn't know much about how to teach languages. So what we did, this was about 3 years ago, is we went to read a lot of books on how to best teach languages. And what we found was pretty amazing to us. We realized that all these books on how to teach languages were very similar to books on diets, in that they all contradict each other. So for example, with diets, there are some diets that say you can only eat meat. There are other diets that say you can never eat meat, and they all contradict each other. It was the same with books on teaching languages. They weren't agreeing on everything. So what we did is we kind of listened to what we could out of these books, but then we started basically improving our curriculum, not based on what the books said, but based on our own data. So what we do now, because we have so many users, what we do is the following. If we want to determine whether we should teach plurals earlier or later in a given course, for example, in English, do we want to teach plurals earlier or later? What we do is we figure that out with our own users. So we do an experiment. So for example, what we do is for the next 50,000 people that sign up, by the way, it takes about 12 hours to get 50,000 new users for Duolingo. For the next 50,000 people that sign up, for half of them, we teach them plurals a little later than the other half. And then we measure which ones learn better. So which ones make more mistakes, which ones come back more often, etc. And then we can figure out, once and for all, which is better. Is it better to teach plurals earlier or later? Just entirely based on data. And then we do this every day. So Duolingo is actually getting better every day at teaching you languages because we're doing experiments on our users. Now, it's because of this. By the way, this is the reason that Duolingo is so effective at teaching you languages. And this is something that we really believe in Duolingo, that everything we teach should be based on data and not somebody's opinion. We thought when we were reading all these books on how to best teach a language, it was mostly based on opinion. It's just somebody had an opinion on how to best teach a language, whereas everything that we do is entirely based on data. And for example, because of this, somebody did a study about how effective Duolingo is at teaching you a language. This was somebody from the City University of New York, and they found that if you use Duolingo for 34 hours, you learn the equivalent of 1 semester of college in that language. And now the striking thing here is that 1 semester of college usually takes a lot longer than 34 hours. So Duolingo is extremely effective at teaching you languages. So anyways, that is all I want to say. Thank you. And that's good. Thank you.